It's fun to window shop, but in this episode, we're shopping for windows, and that's a lot of work. You know, today's windows are technological marvels. The frames and panes for even basic models provide much better insulation than the old configurations, reducing drafts and cutting home energy costs. Modern windows are also easier to clean. No need to teeter on highlighters, simply tilt in or remove them and wash them inside your house. But these benefits come with very high price tags, and Checkbook's found that some companies abuse customers with high-pressure sales tactics and substandard installations. I'm Herb Weisbaum, the Consumer Man, a contributing editor at Checkbook.org.
Welcome to Consumerpedia at Checkbook.org. We're the nonprofit that helps consumers select services, avoid trouble, and save money. Because we don't accept any advertising or take money from any business we recommend, you can rely on Checkbook.org to be completely independent and objective. Now, here's the host of Consumerpedia, America's consumer expert, the Consumer Man, Herb Weisbaum.
The type of windows you choose will affect your home's appearance, the amount of light that gets through, and your comfort. Plus, some windows last longer than others. Checkbook's executive editor Kevin Brasler is here to explain your choices, cut through the hype about expected energy savings, and explain how to find a reliable contractor to install those new windows.
Hello, Herb.
So if I were still on the radio, I would have started this segment with Johnny Nash, I Can See Clearly Now, and said something like, buying windows is a pain, but Kevin Brasler is here to make it a painless process for us. And then the audio guy would have dropped in a rim shot, and you would have left.
I'm not sure I can promise to make this an easy process. One thing we found, and we'll get into this, is that a lot of window installation companies really have deceptive selling techniques. A lot of them do just terrible work also. And so you really do need to protect yourself. These are very expensive purchases these days. And you want to make sure that the installation work that's being done and the windows you're being sold are top quality.
Absolutely. So let's start with the overall premise that energy savings is one of the big reasons why many homeowners replace their windows. So reality check, how much will new windows reduce my energy bills?
Yeah, one big problem is that a lot of window installers promise huge energy savings if you buy their product. Some even say things like, oh, it's this expensive, but it'll pay for itself because you're going to have lower utility bills. And it's true, if you replace really old, really drafty windows, you will see lower utility bills. But it's impossible for me to tell, listeners out there, on average, you're going to save this much, because how much you will save depends on your location, how much air leakage your old windows allow, the types of replacement windows you buy and select, and the quality of the installation itself matters too. If your old windows are really, really drafty and leaky, it's possible you might save $200 to $400 per year on energy costs, but most of us, we won't save nearly that much.
So while this may be a smart purchase, there's no way the cost of new windows are going to pay for themselves, which is what some companies claim.
Right. They will save you on energy bills. I'm not arguing otherwise. But for most of us, in terms of the cost benefit, it's really not even close. Even for those of us who live in areas with really cold winters and have really old and drafty windows, as I used to have in my old house, you're still not going to recoup the project costs of redoing all your windows, even within 15 or 20 years.
And is that because the windows are just simply so darn expensive?
Yeah, it's really astonishing that new windows are so expensive. We found when we shopped window installers that even the least expensive vinyl replacement windows often cost more than $500 each. And good quality vinyl replacements cost between $750 and up, including installation, per opening. If you want top quality wood or composite windows, which look and function better than vinyl ones, then you'll pay even double that. Some of those windows, they cost more than $2,500 per opening. So even if you have a small home and you replace only 12 windows, your job's going to run you more than $8,000. So these fancy new windows, they're not going to cut your energy costs by $8,000 or triple that, depending on what you're buying, over those windows' lifetime. They will indeed save you energy, but not nearly as much to cover project costs.
So just to be clear before we move along, if a window installation company claims huge energy savings, you got to beware.
Yeah, it's possible that your old windows are so drafty that you will see huge energy savings. But when these companies tell customers, this project, it'll pay for itself, I can't believe that's ever true anymore, given the cost of new windows. And this is a big problem in the industry, as a lot of window installation companies are quite dishonest about energy savings and other matters. There's a lot of competition in this business, and many companies use questionable selling and marketing tactics. So another example is several years ago, one contractor told my mother-in-law that their products were unique, that they applied this coating to their windows that was used by NASA and the Empire State Building, and that no other companies could offer such a thing. And I'm still baffled as to why they thought, the latter, the Empire State Building, was so impressive. I mean, if you're going to say you installed them in the White House or the Pentagon, not the thing King Kong climbed decades ago. I mean, it was just absurd, and it was complete BS. I mean, everything they said was completely untrue. It seemed good, but it wasn't true. And we also find that, the window companies that advertise on the radio constantly in most metro areas, those companies are especially notorious for making outlandish and false claims and for doing terrible work. According to the ratings we collected, these really big outfits that advertise heavily, for the most part, really kind of overwhelming, not even for the most part, don't get good ratings from their customers. And it's really important that you get good quality installation work. That work can greatly affect how long your windows hold up, how well they prevent drafts. It's just really important to select the right company for these types of projects.
So obviously, energy savings is only one reason why you might want to replace the windows. You may just have bad windows that are leaky or look terrible or falling apart or you can't open and close or whatever.
For sure, and that's why I've replaced windows before. I mean, if you have old windows that are drafty and they make rooms uncomfortable or they just look terrible, I mean, that's a good reason to replace your windows.
And if you're looking to save energy, new windows is not the place to start. As we discussed in Consumerpedia Episode 8, Ways to Save Energy at Home, there are a lot of simple repairs and improvements you can make that will yield big energy savings.
Yeah, so I'm glad you were paying attention during that episode, Herb.
Try to.
As we discussed then, and as we discussed in our section on saving energy at home at checkbook.org, there are many projects that are geared towards saving energy that cost very little to do, but yield big savings off utility bills. So, for example, just making sure that you have weather stripping installed around all your exterior doors, or if you have exposed ductwork, making sure that it's well sealed, or even buying and installing a programmable thermostat. Those things yield big savings and costs next to nothing to do. Things that require a little bit more spend, like improving your attic insulation, well, you're going to have to pay to do that, but the payback period in terms of recouping those costs is very fast. And these days, if you need to replace a furnace, you should definitely opt for an efficient model or consider buying a heat pump instead. The federal government will soon offer very generous rebates to do that and many other projects.
So what should you look for when buying new windows? We're going to talk to Kevin about that next. I'm Herb Weisbaum, the Consumer Man, and this is Consumerpedia, powered by Checkbook.org.
Want ratings for local window installers in your area? Checkbook has ratings for dozens of companies in and around these 7 cities: Boston, Chicago, Philadelphia, Seattle, San Francisco, Minneapolis-St. Paul, and the Washington, D.C. area. To find out more, visit checkbook.org. Our advice is always free. Ratings of local services are available with a subscription. If you live in one of these 7 areas and haven't joined Checkbook yet, check us out. Get your free 30-day subscription at checkbook.org/Consumerpedia. And if you like what you've heard, we hope you'll consider becoming a Consumerpedia supporter by using the link at the bottom of the show notes to make a small contribution each month.
All right, you've decided to buy new windows. What should you be looking for? And are there ways to judge the quality of these products?
Yeah, so one thing you shouldn't get too impressed about is if companies tell you that they manufacture their own windows. Lots of companies assemble windows themselves. The good news is that all windows sold today are required to be pretty energy efficient. They don't leak much air, and all of them are going to be of pretty high quality. So all new windows, for example, they must consist of 2 panes of glass with some insulation in between to, again, meet the Department of Energy's requirements for new windows. But among the different windows that are available, there are still big differences. Vinyl windows, as I mentioned before, they're the least expensive types, but sometimes they don't look great. Wood windows, they look better, but companies often clad them in vinyl, and they do that so they don't have to be painted each year, but then it kind of makes them look like vinyl windows. Some companies are also now selling composite windows. These are made of wood and other materials. These windows and high quality wood and vinyl ones, they look great. But in general, the fancier the window, the better it looks, the more you're going to pay for them. Some windows cost each $2,000 or more.
Wow, that's a lot of money. So we often recommend consumers look at differences in warranties and guarantees when they're comparing products. That would definitely apply to windows.
Yeah, depending on their construction, windows can last for decades, or they can rot and fail within a few years. So it's really important to at least start out by checking Consumer Reports window ratings. They periodically test about a dozen best-selling models for resistance to rain and wind. But the problem there is that Consumer Reports, they test only a small number of models, and so you might have to do some homework on your own. One way to do that is to check guarantees. Better sealed window units tend to come with 20-year or longer warranties, and they don't prorate reductions in the covered value as time passes. So in other words, after 10 years, if you find a product defect, they're not going to pay you just half of what you paid for the windows. They'll actually pay to replace the windows themselves. The other thing to do is talk with Windows salespeople about durability. Try to talk with several installers and get their opinions on which window brands they find have been most reliable.
A lot of times with energy saving sort of things, there are tax credits or incentives. Are there any tax incentives or credits for replacing windows?
There's a federal tax credit. It's equal to 30% of the cost of eligible improvements made during this year all the way up to 2032. But for window and skylight installs, the maximum annual credit is going to be $600. And to qualify for that credit, you have to buy products that meet Energy Stars, which is a program of the Department of Energy, its most efficient criteria. So the cost per window for those types of windows is pretty high. It's more than double that annual $600 tax credit app per window, right? So the maximum you can take per year is $600 for your project, and each window costs more than double that. So I guess you could, replace just one window per year and takes the tax credit over and over again, $600 per year. But you're going to have a problem finding window companies willing to do that, install one window per year. A lot of window companies, they have 4 window minimums. They just don't want to deal with someone who wants to replace one window at a time. But I think it's notable that the government, the federal government, and most utilities really don't offer generous tax credits or other types of incentives and rebates for windows. The reason is that, again, the cost benefit doesn't make as much sense as making other improvements around your home geared toward energy savings.
Interesting point you made, because I always hear on the radio or see on TV, we make our own windows here locally. It's not like you're buying produce that it's a big deal that it's coming locally. Is it a better window if it's made locally? Is that something you should even consider? Or is that just puffery, marketing puffery?
Puffery. Most window installers assemble windows themselves in their own shops and then bring it to you. These things have to be usually somewhat customized to fit your opening because homes have various different sized openings. And so it's not necessarily a mark of a good window or a good installer that they do that assembling work themselves. Most companies that specialize in window installations, especially for vinyl windows, are doing that themselves. You really have to check and see, how is it assembled? If it's a vinyl window, is everything, fully fusion welded? And it's a better quality window than simply windows that are screwed together. And so we're kind of getting into these technical jargon that we describe more at checkbook.org in terms of, ways to spot quality. But the fact that a company just assembles its own stuff doesn't mean much.
So getting the right windows is clearly important. So is finding a good installer. Some advice on how to do that straight ahead. I'm Herb Weisbaum, and this is Consumerpedia, powered by Checkbook.org.
Consumerpedia Fast Facts. The word window comes from Old Norse. It's a combination of vinder, wind, and aga, eye. It literally translates to eye hole. According to Wikipedia, the first known glass windows were produced by the Romans, who exploited a technology first developed in Roman Egypt. Those windows were extremely thick and almost impossible to see out of. It would be almost 1,000 years before windows became transparent as they are today.
choosing a good installer is as important as choosing the right windows. Window companies get a disturbing number of complaints, often for doing sloppy work. Kevin, explain.
So when we survey consumers about window installers they've used, we see really big variations in customer satisfaction scores among the various window companies that we evaluate, more so than most other types of home services. I mean, some companies in this category get really highly favorable reviews from almost all the customers we survey, but many others get absolutely dreadful ratings. I mean, it is really crucial that you hire a contractor that will do good work and stand behind the products they provide and install. In addition to big differences in service quality among window installation companies, our undercover shoppers found huge price differences when we asked them to quote on essentially the same installation jobs. So you must get several bids, at least 3, but 5 is better, from highly qualified companies. Doing this will ensure that you're not overpaying, that you're hiring a company that just simply charges high prices. We found that some companies for window installation work charge 3 or even 4 times more than others for essentially the same windows and installation.
So it sounds like from what you just said, for our listeners who don't live in the 7 cities where Checkbook has ratings, you better take the time to make sure you got a good company. Check references, talk to other people who've had the work done, maybe check with the Better Business Bureau, something like that, to make sure you're not getting one of these guys that do lousy work.
Yeah, I think it's crucial that you make sure, as when hiring any kind of contractor, that you're dealing with an outfit that will stand behind its work, that will offer you strong guarantees, and take other steps to make sure that you're protecting yourself from someone who will do lousy work. And in the case of window installers, as I keep saying, there are a lot of bad actors out there in terms of companies that just do terrible work.
And as usual, Checkbook found you can't assume that a high price indicates good work.
Yeah, we once again here found that the saying, you get what you pay for, is a myth when it comes to window installations. We found that great companies, those that get really high ratings from their customers in our surveys, that they were just as likely to quote low prices as high prices. The key is to identify good companies, which we did by surveying consumers, and then collect bids from several of those. Doing this will likely save you thousands of dollars on your job because companies just have highly variable pricing out there. And as with any home improvement job, before you agree to hire a company, get everything in writing, including any warranties or guarantees. Check to make sure the contractor carries liability and workers' comp insurance coverage. And get a schedule estimate of when the job should start and finish. I mean, almost all window jobs can be done in just one day. Most can be done in just half a day. It's a pretty quick process. So there's no reason to have to pay anything more than a small deposit before work starts. It's not like they're going to be in your home for months and you need to pay them as they go. That doesn't apply here in terms of window installation work. And by withholding most of your payment until the work is complete, you maintain leverage to make sure the work gets done and is satisfactory to you before that final payment is made. It means that you get to say when the job is done.
So if the contractor says we need a bunch of money up front because we're making these windows for you, they're custom made for your home, that's a red warning flag?
Yeah, it means you're dealing with the wrong installation company. Good contractors should have good credit, and good contractors should be willing to, extend themselves to you and make you feel comfortable about the payment arrangements. And the best payment arrangements are those where you, the homeowner, gets to pay most of the cost of the job at the end.
So bottom line, this is a big purchase. It's a big project. You need to take the time to find the right windows and the right installer.
Yeah, it's really important that you not get rushed. A lot of these companies, they have very sophisticated salespeople who come out and try to pressure you into something. As we mentioned before, a lot of these companies make promises that just aren't true or make claims that are false. It's really important to take your time. This is a really expensive purchase and treat it that way. Don't assume that a company, just because it claims to have something unique or does great work or installed windows at the White House or the Empire State Building or some nonsense like that, is going to do good work for you.
By the way, the first podcast you and I did together 2 years ago, Consumerpedia Episode 1, is all about choosing a good contractor. So we're going to put a link in the show notes to make it easier for you, our listeners, to check it out. Kevin, I got to say, you did make it painless. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for this edition of Consumerpedia. We hope you'll rate this episode and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Remember, we release new episodes every other Thursday. Another way you can support this show is to follow us on Consumerpedia on Facebook and Instagram, and at My Consumerpedia on Twitter. I'm Herb Weisbaum. Thanks for listening.
Consumerpedia is a public service of Checkbook.org. We're a unique nonprofit that helps you save money and make smarter choices. You can count on Checkbook to help you find the best services and avoid the worst, with local ratings that are accurate and unbiased. If you live in or around these 7 cities and haven't joined Checkbook yet, check us out. Boston, Chicago, Philadelphia, Seattle, San Francisco, Minneapolis-St. Paul, and Washington, D.C. To get your free 30-day subscription, go to checkbook.org/consumerpedia. If you like what you've heard, we hope you'll become a supporter by using the link at the bottom of the show notes to make a small contribution each month. Consumerpedia, empowering consumers to save money and make smarter choices.